Now, let's go into cluster B personality disorder. And these are disorders that are characterized by personality styles that are impulsive, dramatic, highly emotional, and erratic. So under that, we have 4 personality disorders: antisocial PD, borderline PD, histrionic PD, and narcissistic PD. So what is antisocial personality disorder? So antisocial personality disorder continuously violate the rights of others, often lies, fights, and has problems with the law, and can be deceitful or manipulative in order to gain profit or pleasure, and lacks feelings of others and remorse over misdeeds. Borderline personality disorder is characterized by instability in self-image, mood, and behavior. The person cannot tolerate being alone, has unstable and intense relationship with others, and exhibits behavior that is impulsive, unpredictable, and sometimes self-damaging. A person with histrionic personality disorder is excessively overdramatic, emotional, and theatrical, feels uncomfortable when not the center of others' attention, exhibits inappropriately seductive or provocative behavior, and may alienate friends, and demands for constant attention. And of course, the narcissistic personality disorder have an overinflated and unjustified sense of self-importance, and are preoccupied with fantasies of success. They believe they are entitled to special treatment from others, that take advantage of others, and lack empathy. So that's just a rundown of the cluster B personality disorders. Let's now take a deep dive onto the different disorders. So first is ASPD. So ASPD is characterized by a pervasive pattern of disregard for or violation of the rights of others. So one of the most important features of ASPD is the individual's lack of remorse or guilt for the acts they have committed. So while many individuals break the law and engage in antisocial behavior, it is not appropriate to assume that antisocial behaviors indicate antisocial personality disorder. Individuals with ASPD do not feel as though they are doing anything wrong necessarily, and are able to internally justify all of their behaviors and actions. Though the word antisocial is often used to indicate someone who does not like interacting with others or may be shy or reserved, these characteristics have little or nothing to do with ASPD and should not be necessarily be associated with it. So I think the proper term for someone who does not like interacting with others, the term is called asocial, not antisocial. Okay? They are asocial. And ASPD is sometimes referred to as psychopathy or sociopathy, though the criteria might be slightly different depending on the method of diagnosis. I will explain later what's the difference between psychopathy and sociopathy. So let's now look into the diagnostic criteria for ASPD. So first, a pervasive pattern of disregard for and violation of rights of others occurring since the age of 15 years old, as indicated by 3 or more of the following. Number 1, failure to conform to social norms with respect to lawful behaviors, as indicated by repeatedly performing acts that are grounds for arrest. Deceitfulness, as indicated by repeated lying or use of aliases or conning others for personal profit or pleasure. Number 3, impulsivity or failure to plan ahead. Number 4, irritability and aggressiveness, as indicated by repeated physical fights or assaults. Number 5, reckless disregard for the safety of self or others. Number 6, consistent irresponsibility, as indicated by repeated failure to sustain consistent work behavior or honor financial obligations. Number 7, lack of remorse, as indicated by being indifferent to or rationalizing having hurt, mistreated, or stolen from another. And of course, before you diagnose someone with ASPD, they must be at least the age of 18. And of course, you cannot just diagnose someone with ASPD unless there is an evidence of a conduct disorder with onset before the age of 15 years old. And of course, the exclusivity clause that it is not because of schizophrenia or a bipolar disorder. So, as I said, not everyone who commits crime have ASPD. And of course, since the media and the movies seems to be fascinated with ASPD, they have formed a stereotype for it that is not really based on the DSM-5 or grounds in reality. So that's why they seem to be fascinating to study because they are also charming. Okay. So, but of course, the clear difference between ASPD and of course narcissistic is that they already have conduct disorder before 15. So people are already noticing the non-conformance of the child before they are 15 years old. So they are also very charming because they use deceit and they lied and they con others for personal profit or pleasure. So it is also indicated by impulsivity. They fail to plan ahead. And of course, the another thing is they lack remorse or guilt for the things that they do. So, what now is the difference between psychopathy or sociopath? The difference between sociopaths and psychopaths are that psychopaths are classified as people with little or no conscience. Sociopaths do not have a limited, albeit weak, ability to feel empathy and remorse. Psychopaths can and do follow social conventions when it suits their needs. Sociopaths are more likely to fly off the handle and react violently whenever they are confronted by their consequence of their actions. So, psychopathy, there may be also odd belief systems or they are more on the quote unquote insane side than in sociopathy. They are more on the impulsive side. So another difference between sociopath and psychopath is that for sociopaths, they make it clear that they do not care how others feel. They behave in hot-headed and impulsive ways. They are prone to anger and rage, recognize what they are doing but rationalize their behavior. They also cannot maintain their regular work and family life and can perform emotional attachments, but it is difficult. For psychopaths, they pretend to care, display cold-hearted behavior, fail to recognize other people's distress, have relationships that are shallow and fake, maintain a normal life as a cover for criminal activity, fail to form genuine emotional attachments, and may love people in their own way. So, those are some of the clear differences between psychopaths and sociopaths. But overall, they are both the same disorder, ASPD, or antisocial personality disorder. So, the next disorder that is also interesting to look at is the borderline personality disorder. So, the central features of BPD are patterns of impulsivity and instability in mood, interpersonal relationships, and self-image. These patterns emerge in early adulthood and persist throughout the lifetime. And one telltale symptom is intense fear of abandonment, which underlies the unstable relationships characterized of BPD. People with BPD often engage in idealization and devaluation of others, alternating between high positive regard and disappointment. Other symptoms may include intense anger and irritability, self-mutilation, and suicidal behavior. So, another thing, especially when it comes to the relationships of people with BPD, so if they sense any indication of negative emotion, criticism, or abandonment, they will completely devalue that once idealized person and even seek to hurt them. Why is it called borderline personality disorder? So, the reason why it is called borderline personality disorder because before, doctors previously thought that it was in the border between two different disorders, neurosis and psychosis. And as you can see, in neurosis, they have a very emotional features. Very, of course, there is an instability in mood, so that's the neurosis. But at the same time, they are borderline psychotic because they borderline to that delusions of intense fear of abandonment, or they have idealized images of a person that devalues them. So yeah, it's alternating. So the diagnostic criteria for borderline personality disorder is that A pervasive pattern of instability of interpersonal relationships, self-image, and affects, and mark impulsivity beginning by early adulthood and present in variety of contexts as indicated by 5 or more of the following. Number 1, frantic efforts to avoid real or imagined abandonment. So note, do not include suicidal or self-mutilating behavior covered in criterion 5. Number 2, a pattern of unstable and intense interpersonal relationships characterized by alternating between extremes of idealization and devaluation. Number 3, identity disturbance marked by persistently unstable self-image or sense of self. Number 4, impulsivity in at least 2 areas that are potentially self-damaging, for example, spending, sex, substance abuse, reckless driving, binge eating. Note, do not include suicidal or self-mutilating behavior covered in criterion 5. Number 5, recurrent suicidal behavior, gestures or threats or self-mutilating behavior. Number 6, affective instability due to a marked reactivity of mood. For example, intense episodic dysphoria, irritability, or anxiety usually lasting hours and only rarely more than a few days. Number 7, chronic feelings of emptiness. Number 8, inappropriate intense anger or difficulty controlling anger. For example, frequent displays of temper, constant anger, recurrent physical fights. Transient and stress-related paranoid ideation or severe dissociative symptoms. So, those are the diagnostic criteria for BPD. So, of course, there is an ongoing debate about the terminology of this disorder. So, especially the word borderline. The concern is that the diagnosis of BPD stigmatizes people and supports discriminatory practices, suggesting that the personality of the individual is flawed. There are many stigmatizing features of BPD, including emotional instability, intense, unstable interpersonal relationships, a need for intimacy, and a fear of rejection. As a result, people with BPD often evoke intense emotions in those around them. So, pejorative terms are often used to describe people with BPD such as difficult, treatment-resistant, manipulative, demanding, and attention-seeking, and may become a self-fulfilling prophecy as the negative treatment of these individuals trigger further self-destructive behavior. Also, women are 3 times more likely to be diagnosed with BPD, corroborating the false stereotype of the hyper-emotional and unstable woman that will not conform to the traditional female roles. In fact, the large criticism of BPD from a feminist perspective is that the diagnosis forces women into traditional gender roles for fears of being stereotyped. Many survivors of childhood abuse who are diagnosed with BPD are re-traumatized by the negative responses from healthcare providers. Some argue that people diagnosed with BPD should instead be diagnosed with PTSD, as this would acknowledge the impact of abuse on the person's behavior. Others argue that the diagnosis of BPD does not encompass all aspects of the disorder and is neurologically and characteristically different from BPD. So, so there is also a suggestion to change the name of the borderline personality to emotional instability personality disorder, something like that. So I think in one of the playlists, I linked a video there of, if you know Anthony Padilla, and he often interviews people with mental disorders. So maybe if you can check out the interview there about people with BPD, so I think you can learn more about them. So next, histrionic personality disorder. So this is characterized by a pattern of excessive attention-seeking emotions, usually beginning in early adulthood, including inappropriately seductive behavior and an excessive need for approval. Histrionic people are lively, dramatic, vivacious, enthusiastic, and flirtatious. So people with HPD have a high need for attention, make loud and inappropriate appearances, exaggerate their behaviors and emotions, and crave stimulation. They may also exhibit sexually provocative behaviors, express strong emotions with an impressionistic style, and can be easily influenced by others. So HPD is diagnosed 4 times more often in women as it is in men. So what is the diagnostic criteria for HPD? So, a pervasive pattern of excessive emotionality and attention-seeking beginning by early adulthood and is present in a variety of contexts as indicated by 5 or more of the following. Number 1 is uncomfortable in situations in which he or she is not the center of attention. Number 2, interaction with others is often characterized by inappropriate sexual, seductive, or provocative behavior. Number 3, displays rapidly shifting and shallow expressions of emotions. Number 4, consistently use physical appearance to draw attention to self. Number 5, has a style of speech that is excessively impressionistic and lacking in detail. Number 6, shows self-dramatization, theatricality, and an exaggerated expression of emotion. Number 7 is suggestible, meaning they are easily influenced by others and of circumstances. And number 8 considers relationships to be more intimate than they actually are. Okay, so the difference between BPD and histrionic personality disorder is that BPD, there is an instability, mood instability, and when it comes to relationship, a person with BPD may at first praise that person or idolize that person, and then once there is a hint of suspiciousness or paranoia when it comes to that person, that person will literally devalue that person they are in a relationship with. Meanwhile, in histrionic personality disorder, so they want to be the center of emotion, and usually they thought their relationships are more intimate than they actually are, but maybe it's more shallow. Okay, and they like to be the center of attention, and it's also prone to being stereotyped because BPD and HPD are often more diagnosed in women than in men. So, yeah, there is really a need for consideration to look into the family history, the history of mental disorders of that person. Okay, and of course, the psychosocial factors as well. So, the next one is the narcissistic personality disorder or NPD. So, in NPD, this is a personality disorder in which a person is excessively preoccupied with personal advocacy, power, prestige, and vanity, and is unable to see the destructive damage that they are causing to themselves and to others. People with NPD are characterized by exaggerated feelings of self-importance. So it is estimated that 1% of the population with rates greater in men. They also have a sense of entitlement and demonstrate grandiosity in their beliefs and behavior. They have a strong need for admiration and lack feelings of empathy. So it is estimated. So this was first formulated in 1968, and NPD was historically called megalomania because it is a severe form of egocentrism. So let's see the diagnostic criteria for NPD. So in NPD, there is a pervasive pattern of grandiosity in fantasy or behavior, a need for admiration, and a lack of empathy beginning by early adulthood and present in a variety of contexts as indicated by 5 or more of the following. Number 1, has grandiose sense of self-importance. For example, exaggerates achievements and talents, expects to be recognized as superior without commensurate achievements. Also, they are preoccupied with fantasies of unlimited success, power, brilliance, beauty, or ideal love. Also, number 3, believes that he or she is special and unique, only be understood by or should associate with other special or high status people or institutions. They also require excessive admiration and has a sense of entitlement. For example, unreasonable expectations of especially favorable treatment or automatic compliance with his or her expectations. They are also interpersonally exploitative, so meaning they take advantage of others to achieve his or her own ends. They also lack empathy and is unwilling to recognize or identify with feelings and needs of others. They are often envious of others or believe that others are envious of him or her. They show arrogant or haughty behaviors or attitudes. So, as you can see, the difference between ASPD and narcissistic personality disorder is that in ASPD, they are more on the rule breaking, the non-conformance of the rules in that culture. Meanwhile, in NPD, they are more on self-entitlement, sense of grandiosity. Okay, so they both have lack of empathy, but in narcissistic personality disorder, they usually exploit others for their own gain, and so they are unempathetic to what other people feel about them. People with NPD also believe they are special and unique, and of course, they demand admiration. So, another difference between histrionic and narcissistic is that in narcissistic, they require admiration. Meanwhile, in histrionic, they require attention. In histrionic, they would go on lengths to be noticed. Meanwhile, in narcissistic, they have that sense of entitlement and would often get jealous with or envious with other people who get the spotlight other than him.